It's a very strange experience, yeah, to think back at what we did, and I kind of think that, I don't know if I was capable of that, but somehow I was.
To me, seems like almost like it didn't happen. Like out there is so different from normal life that the 55 days that we spent out there's no connection to the last year since we've been back. So when I do think about it, I look at pictures, I look at the videos of that, look at the stuff that we had on social media, it makes me proud that we did it.
All the time it just seems like it's someone else, really, and it wasn't me. However, I've got some pretty strange video footage of me, so yeah, it must have been me.
Every so often I'll just remember another part of the trip that happened. So yeah, it's a strange experience being back for sure. About 4 years ago we decided we wanted to do a big adventure, and we looked into different adventures around about the world.
I just came back from walking the Camino de Santiago, so it's a 500-mile walk across Spain. And I went to the pub with my brother after that, and we started talking about other adventures, and Kris was wanting to do an adventure, so we got a pen and paper from the barmaid, and we wrote down every adventure we could think of. Eventually we came up with the idea of this Atlantic rowing race. It was set up in 1996 by Sir Che Blythe, and the more we read about it, the more we wanted to do it, you know. And then a few days later, after the hangover had subsided, Kris had phoned me up and said, yeah, you owe me some money. And I was like, that's a bit strange. I was like, I'm pretty sure, you know, we've shared the pints and all that. It's all right, you know, I'm fair and even for that. And they said, yeah, as you remember adventure number 4 or 5 on the list? I was like, yeah, row an ocean. He's like, yeah, well, I've bought a boat, so you owe me some money.
I've spent my whole life reading about adventurers, and I thought now's the time to stop reading and do it. We raised the money, we did the training, we had a lot of changes within the team, and then we got out there to the race line in December of last year. So it was a big journey, a long journey, 4 years of hard work to get there, to the start. Feelings before the race were a mixture, really. This kind of building of anticipation inside you. It became immense. In the lead up to the race, it was just excitement, you know, and then the night before the race, it's hard to explain how it feels to be lying in your bed knowing that you're about to row across one of the world's most dangerous oceans. There's the constant butterflies of going into something that people that have done it in the past have explained to you, but every single time someone's explained it to you, they've all gone, it's impossible to explain how you actually feel. So there's this unknown feeling of going into it. So we spent that time preparing the boat, getting organised, getting labels made up, so it's all kind of to a point where you instinctively just knew where everything was. So there was no time to think when you're out there in case you needed something. You needed your life raft, you needed your flares, you needed emergency bailing kit or something like that. We got in, you know, down onto the boat, and the minute we rowed away from the harbour for the start line, all that, the nerves left us, you know, and we were getting cracked on with it and starting it, you know. It was kind of similar to starting a race. I did a little bit of running and stuff. You're nervous at the start, but once you start to run, you're going, you know. So once we started to row, that was us. Everything left us. That's us, begun the race, 3,000 miles, goodbye, safety. See you in a couple of months. So we wanted to just say how we're feeling. So the first 40 hours is tough, really tough. Blair had quite bad seasickness, which meant that he lost all the energy and all power. He couldn't even row like he was trying to, but he just couldn't. He hadn't eaten in like 50 hours, was it pretty much? We ate yesterday. He ate this morning for the first time properly. You know, we rode 1 hour on, 1 hour off. We didn't get a lot of sleep. We weren't eating enough. We didn't have enough water. We didn't, have enough comfort, I guess, is what we were missing.
It was on the evening of the third day that I realised that I hadn't drank any water in 3 days, and we'd been rowing 1 hour on, 1 hour off constantly in 40-degree heat. And somewhere in the back of my head, I remember someone saying or reading something that says that if you don't drink water within 3 or 4 days, you're going to be in serious trouble. So on the evening of the third day, Kris arrived with a tiny tin of peaches and said to me to drink half a cup of that, and I did, and then instantly threw up. And I couldn't go inside the cabin because it just made this horrendous seasickness even worse. It was horrible being in that small enclosed space. So I always slept out, tried to sleep out on deck behind Kris. So he would be rowing away and I'd just be lying on deck with my foul weather gear on, waves crashing over me, never sleeping a single bit. And I was absolutely miserable.
I mean, if you think about, normally in one day you would fall asleep and wake up once, we were doing that 12 times a day, so the days seemed to go on forever.
You'd go through extreme highs and extreme lows. Hallucinations were almost a constant in those first 2 weeks, just as your body's getting used to this sleep deprivation and malnutrition. So for the first 2 weeks, I kept hearing farmyard animals behind me. So I'd be rowing away. This is often in the middle of the night. Rowing away in complete darkness, you'd hear waves crashing all around you, and instantly I'd just hear this chicken sound. And then I'd start to hear a cow. And then I started thinking, it's like, well, cows can swim, can't they? I'm sure I've seen a cow swim. And then I'd look round, and obviously I'd just see crashing waves rolling over the boat, and I'd be like, of course there's no cow. I'm 200 miles off the west coast of Africa, of course there's no cows out here. And then I'd be rowing away for another 5 minutes, and then I'd start hearing a pig. I was right, there's definitely no pig, definitely no pig. And then the same thing, it would go on and on and on, and every time I heard a farmyard animal, I would honestly believe it was definitely there, it was really there, it was really behind me. No, I mean, there's the farmyard animals that I see every night, but I mean, that's perfectly normal, that's not a hallucination, that's a real thing. So I turned to Kris and went, no, I've not had them yet, but if I do, I'll tell you.
You'd start to lose weight, you'd start to get sores on your hands and on your rear end, and every time a big wave came over and smashed us on the deck, all the water would get into all your cuts and stuff like that, and your bruises and your sores. And you could hear, I'd be in the cabin and I could hear Blair screaming on the deck when a big wave comes over and smashes him.
There were moments when I just wanted to give up. There was times when I just didn't want to be there anymore. I remember telling Kris this one day, tears streaming down my face, going like, I can't do this. I think I'm going to have to give up. And he said, right, how about we give it until the morning? And I was like, okay, right. So in the morning, we'll reevaluate the situation, and if really you can't do it, then we'll organise something. We'll get some help. I was like, right, okay. We could still see the lights of El Hierro. And what he had done is, whilst I was lying on deck, he had rowed as hard as he possibly could to make sure that those lights disappear over the horizon, and that it was now beyond the point of getting rescued. So now we were in a situation where the fastest way of getting off that boat was to row to Antigua. And that was the time I realised that, I'm going to have to do this now. There's no giving up.
It takes you a good 6 or 7 days to fall into a kind of pattern, and then once your body adjusts, it seems easy, that's just your life. We had 120 days worth of food in our boat, rehydrated rations. 20% of that 120 was wet meals that could be eaten without adding any water. The other meals that we had just added boiling water, or they could be rehydrated cold water as well. So every night, me and Blair would sit down and we'd sit for an hour. We wouldn't row, and we would just have a meal, and it made a big difference because you could clear the air. Nothing got a chance to build up. We wouldn't do any rowing at all. We just put some music on, and for that hour, as the sun went down, we would just sit and have our meal. But after a while, you get bored. The spaghetti carbonara, bolognese, everything else ends up tasting the same. So we really wanted for normal food. That's what we're looking forward to when we get back.
So you need two qualities to be a good ocean rower. You need to be strong, and you need to be fat. It's two things that you don't think really goes together. It was just almost physically impossible to take in enough calories that you burnt on the oars. We needed to eat each 5,000 calories a day. So over the whole 55 days, I ended up losing 2.5 stone, which is, if anyone's looking for a good diet, then I'd recommend rowing an ocean.
There was a few heated debates about stuff, but that's exciting. That was to pass the time, and but there was never once a falling out, which was great.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas to the boys of the little boat, the Pendoister.
We weren't going for a world record, so we weren't pushing ourselves to, be the fastest or be the most efficient and stuff like that. We were just out there to try and stay safe and have fun and enjoy it and take the whole experience in. And the shift pattern lends itself to quite a lot of isolationism, so you spend a lot of time if you're rowing, the other person's sleeping, because you've got to sleep, you've got to catch up on that sleep. If you don't get those power naps in, you're going to be falling asleep on the oars and everything like that, and it's not good. So if you get the opportunity, that's when you've got to, eat, wash, sleep, all the things that you've got to do in your normal day-to-day life in that 1 hour off, because if you're not in that 1 hour off, you're rowing. And that's how it works for us to get across.
So O2, one of the Egyptian team that actually had Elaine Hopley's boat from Dunblane, have been rescued, said that in the last clip. Team Tenzing as well, they were really sound guys, just young guys in their 20s. They were a few boats down from us in the boatyard. They had a really good boat as well, pure class boat, awesome. Anyway, they had a capsize, and then they had a battery fire, and they have also had to give up their race, so they've been rescued as well.
In the first couple of weeks, I think half the fleet had capsized out of the 28 boats that started.
I think there was a few times that we came close to going over, but the boat had this amazing ability just to turn one way, turn the other. It would go hard to port, hard to starboard, and then it would straighten up, and then it would just dart down the bottom of the waves.
It was always kind of in the back of your head of what would happen if we just went over. There was a few big waves that hit us, and we kind of thought that this was it. This is when we're going to go over, and to brace yourself. One particularly big wave, I maintain that it's the biggest wave that hit us. We were forecast about 5-6 meters waves that day, and towards the evening I could see this very big wave off about 5 waves away from us. So I go up the first wave, I could see it off in the distance, and I was like, oh, okay, that's a big wave, but it should crash and dissipate before it reaches us, that's kind of what happens. So then we go down into the trough, I come up the next wave. These are 5 metre waves we're going up and down at the moment. And we go up this next one, it's still there. This massive big wave, you can see it, it's getting closer and closer. I'm like, okay, well, it's still loads of time before it dissipates. So go down, next wave, 2 waves away now, still there. 1 wave away now. I'm at the top of this wave, looking down at this trough before this monster, this huge wall of water coming towards us. And I go down it, and I'm looking up, and I'm thinking, maybe we'll get over this though. Maybe it's going to crash behind us. There's probably the odds of it crashing right on top of us, very slim, you know. So we start to climb it, and it's getting up and up and up, and then I can see at the top of the wave, light starting to come through it. It's starting to get thinner at the top, and that's the sign of it's about to crash. You know, it's about to white water and roll. So we're going up and up and up, and I think to myself, Kris is in the cabin at the moment, and if this wave crashes on top of us, chances are the boat's going to turn on its side and we'll start rolling and rolling and rolling, you know, and we'll just roll until the white water goes away. So I was like, do I shout in to brace to Kris? Do I shout as loud as possible and tell him to brace? But with the noise that's going on, the wind and the waves, the chances are the first thing he's going to do is he's going to open up that cabin and go, what did you say? Which, obviously, just as the wave crashes, horrendous, you know. So I was thinking about that, and I was just like, right, he's on his own. You know, like, good luck to him. So we kind of climb up this wave, and we get to the very top, and we just teeter over the edge of it, and then I can feel the boat pivot and start to go down the back of it. I was like, oh, we made it, fantastic. But then I heard it crash just in front of the boat. I could hear it crash, and at the time I was like, oh, great, we've missed that. You know, that could have been really dangerous, that's good. But the physics of a wave, the back of the wave becomes the front of a wave. If you see ever on the beach, you know, they roll over each other. So we were in the exact position where it was rolling. So we got picked up, the boat got picked up, we got hurled forward at 16 knots, I think was on the little speed thing, which is very fast, especially for an ocean rowing boat. So we got hurled forward at 16 knots, and then suddenly I'm now facing this white wall of water that's rolling in front of me. So I disappear into this white wall of water, and then a split second later we bob out the other side of it, and we're up floating around again in the normal waves. And then the first thing that happens is Kris slowly opens the cabin door and goes, that was a big wave, wasn't it?
Ah, I see, okay. So we saw on the AIS you're off to Rio. Are you going to pick something up there and go somewhere else, or are you picking up cargo?
Our main source of communication on the boat was our VHF radio. It had a range of about 3 or 4 miles at the most.
Yes, that is correct, sir. We will be proceeding to Rio and loading crude oil, most likely.
Every so often you'd see a cargo ship or an oil tanker or a cruise liner, and you'd just see them on the horizon. And they were more than happy to chat away. You know, this may be, you know, the second month of a 4-month voyage for them. So they were more than happy to get, you know, information from us.
Yes, that's the main thing, just to make sure you can see us on the AIS. We're just a small boat with no engine. Over.
Okay, understood. You're a small boat.
Roger that. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye now. Over and out.
When you see a cargo ship appear on the horizon, you know, it could be 3 miles away, but it takes up your whole viewing space, you know, and because you're not used to seeing anything out there, it's quite daunting. So we had to speak to the captain, tell him what course we were doing, tell him that we couldn't really move much in any direction, and then we would, he'd have a wee chat with us, asking us what we were doing, what we were up to and that. He'd always think we were bonkers, like, you know, being out there in the middle of the ocean on a 20-foot wooden boat.
I think he said 2 knots, and ask his speed.
Roger, what speed do you travel at, roughly, on average? Over.
You have to more power,
We had a cruise liner go past us, a P&O ferry cruise liner. We spoke to the captain, and all the guests were sitting drinking their champagne and caviar, and me and Blair are sitting there in loincloths 1,000 miles off the coast of Africa with nothing to eat. So we were jealous of these guys. But I had a big thing that I wanted to go swimming right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, because I figured, well, when else are you going to be able to get there, you know?
Okay, so first swim, we've had a look for sharks and there's none, although there are sharks in these waters and they're very fast, so if I try and get out of the water quickly, it's a shark.
We had to wait for a cam day, which was quite hard, so there's not a lot of cam days out there. You know, we're talking like 3-4 metre waves every day. To know that you've got 1,500 miles one way to land, 1,500 miles the other way to land, you know, 6,000 up the way, 6,000 down the way, it was just crazy. I was amazed how free you felt because you've been kept on that tiny little boat for so long.
There was loads of like incredibly interesting things. Like we saw pods of like 30, 40 strong dolphins swimming around us for half an hour at a time.
You know, I've done stuff away from home before, but I've never done anything big since my children were born. I've got a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, Fia and Mila, and my strategy I knew that we could be out there, you know, up to 100 days. You know, I mean, our boat, one of the crossings that happened in our boat was like 76 days, so I knew that we could be out there for a long, long time. And I decided, I had pictures of my kids and wife and that, but I didn't put them up on the roof of the cabin until I knew that we were definitely going to get into Antigua. So that meant that for 45 to 50 days, I kind of had to just talk to them on the sat phone.
Would you rather be my baby or no?
Oh, you got snow, do you?
That was my coping strategy, almost to isolate myself from it for a long time, and then when I knew that we were on the home straight, that's when I could switch my brain back into normal mode, you know. Because you can't think about land too much when you're out there as well, because one of the issues we had was that we were always looking forward to what we were going to do when we get back, what we were going to do in the summer, what we were going to do in the autumn when we came back, and all these things, you know. And it wasn't working for us because all we kept thinking about was like land and finishing the expedition and all that, you know. We were doing this, probably the most amazing thing we'll ever do in our life, and all we could think about was once it had finished. So that was no good, so we had to change our mindset, you know. So we started looking forward to things that were like on Wednesday or on Friday, like I'm going to have that apple crumble dessert that we've got saved up, I'm going to have that on Wednesday, you know, and for 4 days I would look forward to that, you know. And then I had a little miniature whiskey, like I'm going to have that on Saturday as a celebration of it being the weekend, you know. And I would have this little miniature whiskey and sit and listen to a podcast at the front of the boat and look up at the stars and everything, you know. And that's what we had to start doing. We had to start thinking about the expedition itself and not the end of the expedition. And once we started doing that, mentally it came a lot easier.
Look at the speed, Dylan! 15 knots, smash wire. You've never seen anything like it. The white lightning, like Will from White Lightning, just smashing it out. It was good at ocean rowing.
We got a message from the race organisers saying that Oorstruck, the 4-man work team, were very close to us.
We spoke to them on the radio for a long time. We'd been at sea for 40 odd days by this point, you know, so we're all going a bit mad.
And we got within about 5-10 metres of each other, and we just stared at each other. It was the first other humans we had seen in 40 odd days, you know. So we just kind of stared at each other and just in this amazement of seeing other people, you know, in the middle of this massive, big expanse of blue. So they threw a line over to us, and then we tied on a little bag of goodies for them, and they pulled over, you know, we gave them a few presents, and then they threw over a line, and then we pulled a few presents back to them. So we had some spare whiskey left over from Christmas, so we gave them a little bit of whiskey, and they had met a super yacht or something like that, I think, a few days before. That gave them a crate of beer. So they had a few cans of beer left. So that evening we both had a few drinks, and well, I said a couple of drinks, and passed stories back and forth of the stuff that happened.
Then we just went our separate ways, and they rode off into the horizon. I think it's the first time it's happened in the race that the two teams have managed to meet up.
Hello, we at Team Noble are exhausted. It is day 52 and we should have been in by now.
The wind changed in the final day. It went from pushing us directly towards Antigua to then pushing us south towards South America. We then spent 3 or 4 days rowing against the wind just to stay still. So we rowed 2 at a time for most of it, pushing against the wind, trying to not get blown towards Barbados or towards South America. And this was all after thinking 2 days and we're home. And just because of that freak change in the wind, it added a week onto our journey.
I've got serious doubts whether we'll actually get anywhere close to Antigua, to be honest, unless we get easterlies. If we get easterly wind, we can get there. All we need, if we get 10 hours easterly wind, we can get to Antigua. If we don't get that, then we're running out of distance and energy, to be honest. We can't keep fighting like this.
We had been rowing our hearts out for 24 hours, and then we got a text in the morning saying, "Congratulations, you've gone 1 mile backwards." And we're just like, you know, it's just so disheartening.
And morale is definitely low because all our family are in Antigua waiting for us, and it's something you've thought about every night for the last 50 nights.
But I think what that did, it gave us this last little challenge before we got to Antigua. It was the evening of the day before we arrived, and the sun just started to set. And what happens is the sun sets, and then it'll glow orange for a while, and then it'll slowly just fade away, and then you'll be in complete darkness. And you'll just have, if it's a moonless night, proper, real dark. You can see huge galaxies far, far off because there is no light pollution, and you can just see these millions of stars, trillions of stars just dotted everywhere. But what happened on this night? The sun went down, and the orange glow was there, and we started rowing our night shifts patterns, you know. And then I realised that the sun had been there for, this orange glow had been there for just a bit longer than usual, and it was no longer the sun. And that had to be man-made. It had to be like unnatural light, which meant that Antigua was just over the horizon, and we could see the lights of it glowing up into the sky. And that, from that point, Kris and I just stood and stared at this glowing light after we realised what it was, and we stood and stared for about an hour, just looking at it, going, "That's people over there. That's an island. That's not a boat. That's not a whale. That's not dolphins. That's not shooting stars. It's humans." So I was like, "Wow, we're so close. We're almost done." And then the waves really picked up on that final day, and we were getting 5-meter waves again, pushing us towards Antigua. So that final morning period, just when the sun was coming up, yeah, we were getting hurtled towards Antigua, and then we start to see the island. We start to see lights, and then we see a car drive past with the headlights on it, and we're just like, "There's someone in that car. Like that's a person." You're like, "Oh, we're gonna see people." And we saw cars, and we started seeing trees and houses, and then we saw a little boat come towards us, a little speedboat.
Simple